We came in low over the rim, flying silent through lunar night. Below us, the south polar crater opened like a mouth that had never seen sunlight. Mission time, 78 hours and change. The panel lights washed the cabin in green. Rourke floated opposite me, logging sensor drift on a thermal strip, steady lines, 4 ticks per second. She didn't say anything about it, but we were all hearing the same thing. That 4-beat rhythm, buried in the static. Up above, Sokolov said it matched the background EM noise almost perfectly. He didn't ask what it meant. He just kept recording. The ground crew didn't use our names, just numbers, Delta V targets, margin calls, fuel ratios. One masked voice from a room in Edwards, calm and sharp. He'd never set foot out here and never would. I copied the numbers back. The crater rim rose, swallowed the stars. Landing was clean, engine cut off. Rourke tracked every number, never looking out the window. I called the dust behavior, watched the floodlight reflect off grains that floated too long in place. When we touched down, it wasn't a bounce. The LM settled like it had always belonged here. She told me to take the first step. "You trained the descent," she said. I suited up, checked seals, double-checked cabin pressure, and climbed down the ladder into a silence that didn't feel empty. I didn't say anything dramatic, just contact. That was enough. The crater floor wasn't flat. Frozen ridges and plates, broken like shattered glass. We walked slow, heading toward the instruments we dropped last orbit. Seismometer, magnetometer, passive receivers. All 3 were online, but the seismometer needle was twitching in that same 4-beat pattern. I didn't say anything. We followed suit compass north, 20 minutes on foot. The ground changed. Crystals edged the rock, unnaturally symmetrical. The temperature climbed for no reason. Then we saw it. Something too smooth to be natural, a buried outline beneath the dust. I brushed it clear. 6 sides, sharp as geometry, wide enough to park the rover. It wasn't a rock. It wasn't even cold. The surface flexed under pressure and then reset itself. Rourke said we were the instruments now. We found a seam, thin as hair, too deliberate. She worked a blade under it, and the panel cracked open without sound. No wind, no gas, just a drop in temperature and a hum in the comms, like plucked wire. The hatch opened with no weight. Beneath it was a ramp, gentle slope, glowing faint green, and dust that moved on its own. We stepped inside, not far, just enough to see the spiral curve begin. The walls lit themselves. The vibration in my glove didn't match anything in our loop. Sokolov said the seismometer had gone wild, magnetic flux breathing in and out like something alive. I kept walking. So did she. The first chamber opens like the inside of a snapped geode. 6 walls, 6 ribs, a floor that does not trust the idea of friction, and yet holds our boots as if it made them. In the center hangs an object the size of a small car. It is suspended without support, not spinning, not drifting. It has folds and planes, not quite symmetrical, with edges that seem to decide what to be after my eyes land on them. The floodlight fails to assign a shadow to it. The suit lights around our helmets do, and the shadows move when I blink. I say the words biomechanical structure without meaning to because the phrase is sitting on a card inside my head that someone else wrote. Rourke circles with small steps and keeps her distance as if the object has a temperature that could sting. She narrates like an instructor to keep us honest. Central mass, she says. Variable surface topology. No visible joints, no inscription, no residue. She stops midway through the 3rd sentence. The object has produced a sound, not out loud, It sits at the edge of the suit audio like a whistle a child would use to call a dog. Sokolov says something in Russian that I've only ever heard when a circuit fails at the worst moment. Then he clears his throat and switches back to English and asks if we can repeat the sound for the log. We cannot. I want to back out and put the hatch down and plant our flag that does not exist and go home. I do not say that. I ask if we can bring the recorder forward. Rourke nods. I kneel under the thing and set the box on the floor. The box blinks red, then green, and the needles inside begin to move. At the same time, the object lifts a fraction of an inch, as if I had blown under it. I feel nothing against the suit, but my arms rise without my telling them to, the way a sleeper reaches toward an alarm. I hold them down with deliberate effort and count to 10 out loud to prove that I can still choose a sequence. The object opens at one edge. It does not split. It relaxes. A surface that was flat becomes a lip, and behind the lip I see something that is not a cavity, not a wire, not a bone. It is a pattern in layers that seems to know that my eyes are not built for it. I look away and study my boots. The dust on the floor around us is rising now, very slowly, like ash in water. Rourke is saying my name quietly on the loop, and then she says it the way she said it in the trainer, when she wanted me to stop and approach before the numbers trapped me. I tell her I hear her. I raise the recorder, and the needles freeze. The object closes that edge and opens another. I feel something like a pressure change, except that there is no air here to change. It shows up on the instruments before it shows up in my head. Suit pressure holds. Heart rate. I do not say that word, and I do not read that number into the log. I say the word nominal for the systems, and I believe it enough to make the next decision. We take the photos. We mark the angles. We back out the way we came. One turn at a time. Ramp, spiral, hatch. The object follows us without moving. It changes what it is in a way that keeps pace. The 4-dot rhythm climbs out of the static and sits like a metronome at the edge of hearing. We stand under the open hatch in that not quite light and look at the dust around our boots. It has drawn a shape that we did not ask for. 6 lines, 6 spokes, a small circle in the middle, a smaller circle off to one side, like a map where the legend means more than the terrain. Sokolov begins to repeat our names on the loop. He uses our middle names too. He has never done that. Rourke tells him we are good and that we are returning to the LM. He says to wait 1 second. He plays us a clip from his recorder. It is our loop from 5 minutes ago, but all the pauses are wrong, as if someone else was cutting out the breath between our words and stitching the sentences back together. We close the hatch. The seam disappears as if the material wants to be whole. The heat in the patch drops again, and the needles on the seismometer go quiet. My boots feel heavier than they did 5 minutes ago, which is nonsense. So I shake one foot like a swimmer freeing a fin and tell myself I am fine. On the walk back, Rourke asks for each number twice. She is not doing it to test me. She is doing it to make sure she is hearing the same digits with both ears. I give her the numbers and add the picture of the object to the place in my head where I keep my daughter's face on the day she turned 5. They do not sit together well. We climb into the LM and seal the hatch. The cabin feels warm now, which is wrong because the gauge says it is not. The smell of plastic and metal that was normal an hour ago is louder, as if someone turned up the volume on a factory. I catch myself watching the screws in the panel, as if one might start to turn on its own. Rourke stows her helmet and drinks a squeeze of water and closes her eyes for 2 slow counts. She opens them and brackets her pencil over the page and says, "We have to decide." She will not tell me which way she is leaning. I already know. She wants a second entry with a second recorder and a line back to the LM that we can pull if the ramp closes. She wants a sample if there is anything that can be sampled without touching it. She reminds me that the window for ascent is generous, that we have fuel for a contingency, that our checklist was written by people who expected us to be careful and bold at the same time. I listen and catalog each reason and watch her jaw move in a pattern that I have watched in briefings and debriefs and once in the cafeteria when a camera walked past and she wanted to look like someone a camera could trust. Then I tell her no. I do not tell her no like an argument. I say it the way I say a number. I say we have enough for a return, and we have more than enough to be the first people to say that something made a home under lunar regolith and left a door where we could find it. I say that we can leave the door closed and still fulfill the mission. I say there is a radio tone that climbed into Sokolov's loop and rearranged our pauses, and if it can touch that, it can touch the other things that we think are ours alone. I say that I do not trust what my hands want to do around that object, and I do not trust what my eyes will answer if it asks them a question. She holds the pencil above the paper. She does not write. She looks at the hatch and at her gloves and at me. She puts the pencil down. Ascent, she says. The word lands like a switch. My body finds the steps that my mouth has known since Houston. I bring up the panel and throw the guarded covers with my thumb and middle finger, the way the trainer taught me because the glove is clumsy and the motion helps. Sokolov breathes once into the loop and does not speak. He is hunting for the tone. I can tell by the way he refuses the urge to fill the silence. Checklist. Valves to ascent, batteries to main, guidance align. I call each step because the calling is part of the doing. Rourke echoes each call because the echo completes the circuit. Out the window, the patch of ground where the hatch sits looks like it always did, stubborn and black and harmless. The floodlight catches the dust around it, and the dust lifts a small bit, as if something below has taken a shallow breath. I keep my eyes on the needles. I watch them rest on numbers that mean home. On the mark, we fire the separation charges. The LM shudders in a small way that means we did not break anything we need. The ascent engine lights a heartbeat later. The cabin becomes lighter in the way that is not gravity, but feels like a promise. The surface drops. The hatch shrinks to a coin, then to a pinhead, then to a suggestion. The tone in the loop goes away. I do not trust that. I keep my voice on the line like a tow rope and talk to Sokolov like I did when he taught me docking in the rotating chair. He answers in English for 2 sentences, then in Russian for 3. He does not notice the switch. The last 2 words he says are not any language I know. We climb into polar night and roll to bring the window to the stars. The rim of the crater is a serrated arc that cuts the sky. Somewhere beyond that arc, the command module is falling at a gentle rate that will soon meet ours. I can hear him touch his microphone twice without speaking. He only does that when he is reading something off a page and not sure if he should say it. I ask him for his vector. He reads it with a lag, then repeats it with no lag, then sends the numbers again in a pattern that perfectly fits the 4-dot rhythm. Rourke reaches across and taps the mute on our internal loop. He is hearing it too, she says, very quietly, not as a question. I watch the needles and run the numbers inside my head. We can dock in one pass. We can also put the ascent stage on a trajectory that will carry it back into the crater with just enough energy to strike where the hatch sits. The math is not elegant, but it is possible. I draw the line with a grease pencil on the glass. Rourke follows the line with her eyes. She does not ask what I mean to do. She knows. I tell Sokolov to bring his nose 5 degrees to the left and hold his roll. He answers with the click-click that means he understands, then with a word that is my name, and then with my name again, but with the vowels bent the way a tape recorder bends them when the batteries die. I do not repeat my name down the line. I say the numbers. I will not give that voice any more of me than it already has. We close the distance. The docking target grows in the window, bright and familiar as a clock on a school wall. The cross and circle line up with my pencil marks. The capture latches are waiting to spring. The attitude needles rest on the zeros like well-trained animals content to sit. At the last moment, I fire a small puff of RCS and nudge the nose high. The ascent stage tilts. The burn we held in reserve lights for a thin slice of time and nudges our spent shell into a shallow arc that will carry it back where we came from. It will not be much. It will be enough to fall. Contact. Capture, hard dock. The latches bite. The structure around us rings with a tone that is not mechanical. It fades too quickly to record. Sokolov's face appears in the overhead window when he floats to the hatch. He looks pale in a way that cabin light always makes a person look. But there is something else. His eyes are focused past us. He is listening to a sound too quiet to share. He gives the thumbs up anyway, and we begin the dance of equalizing pressure that we can do with our eyes closed. The hatch opens. He is fluent again. He glances at the mission clock 3 times in 6 seconds. He has always loved clocks. He helps Rourke across with one hand on her harness and one on the handle, and he taps my shoulder the way he tapped it in the trainer when I did something right by accident. He asks for the recorder, and I pass it. The needles inside are frozen at a value that was not on any of the scales before today. He laughs once, short, like he did when a golf ball bounced off a lamp in the crew quarters and no one got hurt. Then he stops laughing and says he has been hearing us on a loop that was not ours. We agree to keep the intercom to one channel. We agree not to play back any of the tapes until we have line of sight to the ground station that is actually a ground station and not a small room with one masked man speaking in numbers. We agree to watch each other for signs that none of us want to define. We strap in for engine light on the hour. There are procedures taped above the panel. None of them mention what to do if you wake something up under the moon. I watch the clock, and the rim of the earth grows into the window 1 degree at a time. The blues creep around the edge like a tide. I do not let myself feel what that blue always makes me feel. I look at the plot on the chart that says where the ascent stage should be if my ugly math is pretty enough to count. The plot line intersects the crater at the right place. The time ticks down to the estimated impact. On cue, the static on our loop climbs in volume and pitch like a kettle left on a stove. The 4-dot rhythm breaks on the last second. The tone stops. The magnetics go quiet. The seismometer on the surface sends us a dead straight line. Sokolov breathes out like a man who has been holding a weight at arm's length. Rourke presses the pencil to the paper and finally writes again. The letters are not in any font I have seen, and that is only because the pencil lead catches on the fibers and her hand is tired. She writes impact. She writes silence. She writes ascent. She underlines the last word twice. The burn home is never a thing of beauty. It is a thing of schedule and discipline and angles you do not argue with. We line up for trans-earth injection and light the engine when the book tells us to light it. The acceleration presses us into our couches in a way that feels like someone standing on your chest and agreeing with you. The panel hums, the sky turns, and the thin horizon of the moon slides toward the corner of the window. I do not look back at the crater. I watch the numbers, and the numbers say we have won a small prize. A path that will intersect the ocean near the ship that is not painted like a ship anyone will admit exists. We run the cabin quiet. We do not play music. We do not tell jokes. We do not pray out loud. We take turns closing our eyes for the length of a coffee and then opening them because a clock asked us to. Sokolov holds the recorder without turning it on. He keeps his thumb on the switch the way a man keeps his hand on a wounded friend's shoulder to keep him from standing up. Rourke hums the old Air Force cadence under her breath and pretends she is not doing it. I watch the vector and the Earth and the small set of numbers that represent our oxygen like a bank balance near the end of a long month. Halfway home, the loop hears the 4-dot rhythm again. It is very faint, like a memory of rain when you have been indoors too long. Sokolov looks at me and does not say a thing. I put a finger to the speaker grill and keep it there for 10 seconds. The rhythm stays at the edge. It does not walk in. I move my finger away. Rourke says we keep the tape off until we have a deck under our feet and someone with a mask on his face can ask us questions with the right words. I am ready to agree. The recorder clicks anyway. None of us move. None of us touched it. The needle flickers. The tape spools a centimeter and stops. We cut the power to the bay. The recorder should be dead. It is not dead because somewhere inside it, there is a tiny mechanical spring that has nothing to do with electricity, and that tiny spring releases a little of its patience and moves the spool again, and the tape whispers the 4-dot rhythm without any help from us. Sokolov eels a hand under the panel and pulls the bay cover and takes the whole box out and sets it in a zip bag and seals the zipper with a strip of aluminum tape we use for everything from leaks to morale. The tape keeps spooling inside the bag. It stops after 6 seconds, like a toy deciding that the game is not fun without an audience. We make the coast in that kind of companionship that a crew knows when the worst thing has already happened, and all that remains is to keep every promise small and precise. The earth grows fat. The night side glows with the faint smoke of cities. Someone is awake in every time zone, and some of those people are listening to radios. I wonder what they are hearing in the static. I do not let the thought finish. I run the re-entry checklist and tell myself that if something down on the water wants to take us, it will do it with a crane, not a story. Re-entry is always the same and always new. The cabin grows louder. The light outside the window is not the color of anything natural, and yet it is the most natural color there is if you have earned it. The straps push into the suit. The numbers roll in exactly the way the book says they should, because heat is honest in a way people are not. Sokolov calls blackout. The radio goes to cotton. The voice from the small room in Edwards cannot follow us here, and that is a mercy. In the silence, the memory of the 4-dot rhythm tries to find a place in our heads. It does not succeed. The plasma keeps it out. We come through to cool air and louder static, and a man on the loop who is too cheerful for this hour. He says he has us, and that the ship has us, and that the horizon has us. Splash is a thump, followed by a sway that no simulator can do well. The capsule wall kisses water again and again, and the world smells like salt and machine oil and paint and something else under that. Something like old canvas. The hatches do their dance. A man with a visor leans in and says words he has said 100 times in 100 drills to 100 faces that were never ours. He calls us by names that do not belong to any agency, and he is very careful with the syllables. We answer with numbers, because that is what we have left that is not for anyone else. We ride the cradle and the crane and the deck. Boots hit a surface that moves in a way that tells the bones what planet they are on. Hands that know how to lift men who cannot pretend they are weightless anymore help us stand. We go into a white box with a door that seals and a light in the ceiling that does not flicker. Rourke sits on a bench and holds the pencil in both hands and does not write. Sokolov sets the taped bag in a corner like an egg someone needs to keep warm. I open my mouth, and the story climbs out the way a trained animal goes through a hoop it did not ask to jump through. I tell it straight. Ramp, chamber, object, tone, hatch. I say I made the call to leave. I say which angles and burns I chose and why the ascent stage needed to fall where it fell. I say we heard the tone after and before and during. I say that it tried to bargain with our pauses and that it almost succeeded. I say I do not know if it was alive the way we use that word at home, but it changed the world around it in a way that seemed to include us once we stepped under its roof. The masked man from the room in Edwards is not here. A different man sits with a pad and a pen and a set of eyes that were trained somewhere you cannot see from a road. He asks if the object spoke in English. I say no. He asks if it touched our suits. I say yes, and then correct myself and say no, because no sensor logged contact. But my arms remember wanting to move without me telling them to. He asks if the recorder started itself. I say it did. He asks to see it. Sokolov says it is in quarantine and that he will not open the bag without a proper chain of custody. He looks relieved to have a phrase like chain of custody on the table like a proper tool. We sleep on cots while the ship rolls under us and the white box hums in a frequency that has never hurt anyone. I dream about my daughter's 5th birthday and the way the cake looked like the moon because she asked for it. And we made it. And she laughed when her fork stuck in the icing. In the dream, the cake has a seam on one edge, and when I lift it, the ramp goes down, and there is a light that is not a candle. I wake before I can decide if I am allowed to close the hatch. Morning is a voice on a speaker that tells us what breakfast is called on a ship that does not exist. Rourke eats and keeps the pencil in her other hand and draws the hexagon from memory and gets the ratios right without measuring. Sokolov takes the bag to a room with 2 technicians and a camera and a man with a clipboard who stammers when he says legal words. They cut the tape with scissors that look like they have never been used to cut anything less important. The recorder sits quiet inside. The tape is wound tight. The leader marks the length. He says, almost to himself, that the length does not match the time. We keep answering questions until the ship brings us to a runway we cannot name. The box opens, and the air smells like dry dirt and jet fuel and sunlight. A van with windows shaded like a magician's box takes us to a building where an elevator knows exactly which floor to choose without us telling it. The room is smaller than I expected. The man from Edwards is there this time. He is not masked, and he has a face like a receipt. Precise, unflinching, full of numbers that add up if you trust the math. He thanks us for doing what we were asked to do and for choosing not to do what we were not asked to do. He says that is rarer than it should be. He asks only one question that is not on a form. If you had touched it, he says, do you think it would have touched back the same way? I look at my hands. I look at Rourke. She looks at her pencil. Sokolov glances at the recorder through the glass. I answer for all of us because we have earned that right. No, I say. I think it would have learned what we love first. He nods as if I have confirmed a suspicion he did not want confirmed. He writes something on his pad that is not a number. We are told to rest. We are told the tapes will be reviewed, and that someone will visit our homes under a pretense that will sound normal if anyone is listening. We are told the crater has gone quiet, and that the instruments left on the rim will keep listening in case the silence is only sleeping. We are told a version of the mission will go in a file that sits inside another file. We are told we did not see a hatch. We are told we did not open it. We are told that one day the tone might visit an antenna far from the ice and the dust, and that if that happens, someone will know to call us if calling still works. I am back in a room that pretends to be a hotel suite, but is honest only about the bed and the chair. The curtains are heavy. The air unit hums in a way that matches no rhythm I know, and I leave it on anyway. I start this tape again, because the act of speaking what happened turns it back into a line of hours instead of a knot. I do not reach for the recorder in the bag they let me keep for the personal log. I keep my hands open on the table where I can see them. I say my name and the time and the place. I say that under the moon there is a room where 6 walls hold a shape that may be older than memory. I say that when we stood under it, something in me wanted to offer a question. I did not. I counted instead. 4 dots, then silence. I have been counting all day. I will sleep in a few minutes. When I wake, someone will ask me to retell the part about the hatch. I will tell it again, and I will keep the words plain. I will not let the story teach itself tricks. If you are hearing this, it is because a decision was made to let the count out of the box. If the count matches anything in your head that you did not put there, step away from the radio and fill your hands with something that belongs to you. A cup, a pencil, a child's birthday card. Hold it until the rhythm turns into whatever heartbeat means when you have done your duty and come home. The night is quiet. The ship's horn from earlier rings in my memory, the way a hand on a doorframe rings when you bump it. The moon is above the roofline where no one can see it from this bed. The hatch is closed, and the dust will settle back into lines that some other person might mistake for frost. We did not bring the thing home because we did not invite it. If it wants to write to us, it will find another pen. Until then, I am going to count to 4, then to 10, then to however many it takes to fall asleep with both hands where I can see them, and the light on the wall making a rectangle that looks nothing like a door.